Welcome to the Core Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rawls. The purpose of this podcast is to provide insights, actionable strategies, and encouragement to entrepreneurs in the outdoor industry. Each episode is a conversation with an entrepreneur willing to share what they've learned along the way so that we can benefit from their experiences. This podcast is brought to you by CORE, the Kootenai Outdoor Recreation Enterprise. CORE is a nonprofit organization based in the Kootenai region of interior British Columbia. CORE's mission is to support the growing network of gear and apparel makers, designers, and entrepreneurs within the Kootenays. If you'd like to be a part of the growing industry here in BC, you should join us at the CORE Summit in Kimberley on October 3rd and 4th. The summit is a 2-day conference that gathers people from the outdoor, bike, and snow sport industries within and around British Columbia. We'll have workshops, keynote speakers, and plenty of opportunities to meet with your peers within the industry. Take advantage of the early registration discount by signing up before the end of June. To register, go to coreoutdoors.org/summit. My conversation today is with Mallory Ottariano, the founder and chief everything officer at Youer Apparel. Mallory started her brand as a creative side project, making one-of-a-kind apparel, and has grown it to a full line of active lifestyle apparel for women, with new products releasing every month. Today, Mallory owns her own factory in Missoula, Montana, where they produce thousands of pieces of apparel every year. Mallory has been a vocal advocate for domestic manufacturing and has grown her loyal customer base by being transparent about what it's like to run a small apparel business. In our conversation, we talk about what it takes to get a brand started, her struggle to find reliable factories, and how her loyal customers funded her expansion into starting her own factory. She tells the story of how she turned a horrible experience pitching her products to REI into a viral social media video, and how she has grown her brand without spending $1 on advertising. Mallory is a fantastic person to talk to because she is transparent and willing to share everything she has learned. I loved this conversation with her and was incredibly bummed when I listened back to the recording and discovered there was an issue with her audio. I've done my best to clean it up and make it usable, though my audio engineering skills have a ways to go. The audio isn't perfect, but it's well worth a listen to learn from Mallory's story. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Mallory Ottariano from Youer. Thanks for joining me, Mallory.
Thanks for meeting. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, my first question for you is, what's your fondest memory of being outdoors?
It's more of a time period and most of the specific memory, but there were very specific elements involved in it. When I was 10 years old, my younger brother, we're about 2 years apart, and we spent a ton of time outside together. When I was about 10, we moved into a house that had a really large empty lot next to it that nobody lived on, and it was probably 3 acres or so. And we would go out there every day and just explore and build forts and take our lunches out there and take books out there and just build these structures that we would spend days at a time and intensively camp out in them, and just wandering through the landscape and understanding a lot about myself and forging a relationship with my sibling and just existing alone in the woods at a young age was super amazing, and I think about it all the time.
Wow, that's beautiful. What do you carry from those experiences into now?
Well, I ended up studying architecture and design in school as a result of fort building, really. So that carried through into my life. But I think that entrepreneurship can be very lonely, and you have to have a very deep understanding of who you are. And I think that time in my childhood, I really developed a deep understanding of who I was, and I became very, very comfortable with myself because of spending so much time with myself in the woods.
So there seems to be a seed of entrepreneurship in your early life. Calling back on that experience in the empty fort, I also heard that you had a lemonade stand where you would buy organic lemonade and then jack the price up and sell it to people, unsuspecting customers, and woo them in with your bashful and young appearance. How did that work?
That is so true. Yeah, I grew up outside of Boston, and one of my very good friends lived in the city, and we just set up. We'd go to the busiest corner. We were very young too, 7 years old maybe, and we would go to the busiest corner and get organic lemonade. We're both very artistic, and we'd create these beautiful signs. Organic, this was the early 90s. Organic lemonade maybe didn't have the same ring that it does to it now. So it's very unique and very exciting. And we would just chat people up and kind of stand on the sidewalk and prevent them from walking by us until they bought organic lemonade with our beautiful artistic posters.
Whoa, there's a ton of entrepreneurial lessons in that lemonade stand. Which one of those do you still employ, or do you employ all of them now?
I mean, I think digitally I try to like stand in people's role and like block them until they buy something. But I definitely, there's like no new ideas, right? So you have to figure out how to take an idea that probably exists hundreds of thousands of times in the world and just like put your own spin on it. So like lemonade is available at the store for anybody, but how you sell it is innately you. So I think that applies to what I'm doing today for sure.
So how you sell it. So it's interesting that, maybe we should go back to, how did you end up buying a $100 sewing machine? So you went to architecture school, become an architect, and then somewhere in there, $100 eBay purchase comes into your life. What's that about?
Yeah. I made clothes growing up like a lot. I was homeschooled for a lot of my childhood. And that allowed me like a ton of creative flexibility and freedom and to understand what really like kind of what I was driven by from a young age.
The fort building now makes more sense. The homeschooling
Totally.
fort building. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Got you.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Go for it.
No, that's like that. So style and clothes were always like the way that I expressed myself. And my family is very creative, and I learned how to sew from my mom and my grandma. And sewing was something that I did a decent amount of. And then in college, I started making a lot of my own clothes. I went to art school initially. I went to my first year at a fine arts college, a small, very studio-focused school. And this creative element had been a huge piece of my life for my entire life. Every single day, I had some sort of creative element. School or for just enjoyment. And then after I ended up getting a degree in architecture, and I had kind of a non-creative job, and I realized like there was no built-in creative element to my life anymore, so I had to create one. So the day that I graduated, I ended up buying a cheap sewing machine because I had to use my own at that point, not my mom's. And I decided that if I made clothes for a reason, then I would like put effort into it on a daily basis. So I started an Etsy shop, and I started sewing clothes just to sell them on. I didn't even really expect to sell them. It was just like a reason to make them. And yeah, that thing's really, never did I imagine that this is what would take place 12 years later.
So you're working by day as an like a fresh out of the school architect?
You
weren't even doing it?
No, I was working at agricultural research.
Oh.
Yeah, it was like, I was outside of the lab, so it wasn't like what to be doing.
Sure. That's why you needed something creative to do at night. How long did it take from like selling the first thing on Etsy to you being like, whoa, actually, this is a business that is better. I'm ready to go all in on this thing. How long did that take?
A few years. So I was living in Massachusetts at the time when I started this. A year later, I moved to Montana. And when I moved to Montana, I did get a job doing design. I really didn't like it. And I felt myself just rushing home from that job to sew. And I was selling at events on the weekends and going to farmers markets and selling to local stores. And probably like 2 years into it, maybe 3 years into it, I realized that this could actually be a pretty meaningful amount of money that I could bring in here. And actually, I was finding so much enjoyment in it. I didn't want to be doing this boring day job for this dumb company that didn't even value me. So I started putting serious effort about 2 years into making the swap to match my income making clothes. So in 2015, I was able to exceed my design income by working for myself, and I quit my day job. So 3 years into it, I went full time working for myself.
Nice. And are these all one of a kind pieces that you're making?
They were. Yeah. I was going to thrift stores, and because very unique things have always been really important to me. I never wanted to wear what everybody else was wearing. I was never the girl that wanted to like go to all the stores in the mall and buy Aeropostale. And I actually really hated that. I hated that my friends all looked like one another. And I really rebelled against that for fun. So I was trying to make things that only existed once in the world. So I was going to thrift stores, cutting stuff up, using fun fabrics, and then making these things that you could only make once. And that was kind of the beauty of it. People would see them and be like, whoa, I love this. Do you have it in this size? And no, I didn't. I could make you a different one that was in your size, and it would be the only one in the world. It's kind of exciting.
That's very cool. And what made you go? And at the time, the company had a different name. It was Kind. Is that right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so what? I mean, obviously, you're one of a kind. You're going to thrift stores. You're buying all your own things. You're cutting things. You're sewing them. at some point you realized, oh, I can't scale past 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
What made you
Yeah.
decide? What was the next step for you to be able to grow the business out of just yourself?
Pretty quickly into this, I realized that this way of getting fabrics was totally unsustainable for growth. I was going all over the country to do events. My first year doing this full time, and it was just me making everything too. I went to like 30 events all over the country, from like New England to Chicago to Southern California. Like I was everywhere all the time, and going to all these new stores in all these new cities, because I lived in a small city that didn't have a ton of opportunities for thrifting. And I was going there every single day and spending so much time finding these fabrics, and sometimes striking out and then being unable to make the inventory that I needed. So I knew that I needed to start creating fabric, but I didn't want to just go to a design website or buy something that everybody else could buy. So I looked into licensing artwork from other designers, and that was pretty expensive. And then I realized, okay, if I just watch some YouTube videos and I figure out, like I have an art background, I draw. If I figure out how to make digital circus patterns through YouTube, then like I can do this for free. I happened to be at an event yoga festival in Las Vegas, and the business next to me was a yoga clothing company that owned their own factory and supply chain. And they were like, hey, we can like be a fabric supplier for you and print some of your artwork. So they ended up printing for me to start. So we'd like print small runs of prints and design new stuff all the time, and they'd ship the fabric to me and I would sell it and sew it. And then that got kind of overwhelming too. I was one person. I'm trying to make, like a couple $100,000 worth of clothes every year. And I ended up outsourcing my cutting and sewing to them, and they helped me for a couple of years, and then I've kind of moved on to a variety of other factories since. But it was very, like, I really credit traveling around the in-person events circuit to leveraging the next level of the business, because those in-person connections are really invaluable. You can't just find that stuff on Google.
Mm-hmm. Do you still have some of those same customers that you met at those events back then? Is that where your brand is? So you've got like kind of the back end, the operation side of your business benefited, but is your sales and marketing side really benefited still from that?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Like somebody came into our warehouse yesterday. We launched our newest collection of skirts for the season, which is one of her best sellers. And that was an event probably at this point. And she came in with an armful of skirts. She had like 10 of them that she had bought the years. So she just came in to show us her collection, and she's been around for years. And yeah, it is really awesome to still have that customer base. And in a way, we've sort of taught the customer base about online shopping. I used to go to like all of these wealthy resort towns, and I had a much older demographic of women that I was selling to who weren't using the internet. And then when I started doing those events and started really selling on them, and they sort of like transitioned to continue to support someone, and it was very
cool. I want to talk about the production side, but you just brought something up that I'm really curious about is, so I'm sure you just mentioned like your demographic or your target audience has changed a little bit over time. Do you have like a very specific kind of bullseye of the target market that you're making new designs for and branding and selling to, or is it more of a broad spectrum, just female based?
We do have a target. It always surprises us by expanding a bit. Our target isn't necessarily something that we decided. It's just sort of like who fell into the base.
Sure.
And it's women in their 30s and 40s who live in outdoor towns, who enjoy outdoor recreation, and who want the comfortable, flexible clothing that has an element of design to it and something kind of fun. But we have people buying our stuff from all over and all walks of life, which is interesting. People who wouldn't necessarily stumble upon your stuff.
We share my business and your business share a very similar target market. It's a wonderful one. My question more about back into like the production side. So were you heat sublimating? Is that what you were heat sublimating polyester? That's where you're getting those first designs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You've had some rocky, based on what I've read and heard about, you've had some pretty rocky experiences in the production side of things. And one thing that you've been pretty adamant about, you went from making everything yourself in the basement or to wherever your workshop was at the time. And I think it moved around quite a bit, it sounds like. And then
several basements.
Yeah, several basements. And then you outsource to factories, but your criteria is like there got to be North American factories. Like we are working with American made. I can appreciate that. I agree with that sentiment. what brought you to that? Like, what's the thinking behind that decision?
It was kind of a happy accident, to be honest. I wasn't necessarily opposed to overseas manufacturing or offshoring, but being able to, I mean, like I said earlier, that story of connecting with that manufacturer that was a neighbor of mine at an event, like that's not going to be a connection that happens to an overseas manufacturer. So that was very serendipitous. The proximity of production within North America makes everything easy to communicate. We're in similar time zones. We can hop on a plane and get somewhere very easily. From an environmental standpoint, it makes sense, and it makes me feel good as a founder to know that I'm moving my product around as little as possible. But another really big advantage of working with these smaller manufacturers on the West Coast was that I didn't have to make decisions about making thousands of something.
Amen.
I wanted to work with a very established factory in China, then I was going to have to commit to making several thousand of something. And that is scary, and also kind of takes us on the out of stuff we make, like, most we make a couple thousand of something. We make like several hundred of many different things. And that's fun and interesting and makes it easier to sell and talk about. So it really just kind of naturally happened. But I think at this point, it is very much so an ease of communication. We do have suppliers overseas, and the timelines are much elongated. The shipping is very elongated. The communication is very elongated. You're 14 hours apart, working days. It makes things a little bit slower.
Is that fabrics and notions and stuff, or is it okay? So you're not actually getting anything cut and sewn overseas. It's everything's being cut and sewn in North America. Cool.
Yeah, we just have some fabrics that are made in China and Taiwan.
Yeah, we have our store is very similar. Like we started making things domestically because MOQs, minimum order quantities overseas, were just shocking, and we were like, well, let's sacrifice the margin so that we can actually sell this stuff and turn it around and see if it worked, and you get to test. And then you don't like bet the farm every season on like, oh God, I hope this works.
Totally. Absolutely. I think I was really able to establish, like with the first factory, we ended up having a lot of issues and parting ways, but very amicably. And these people, there was a married couple who ran the factory, and they just became like a really big piece of my life. And we had really familial relationship with each other, which just fostered a lot of respect. And when things did go wrong, it was very easy to communicate with one another. I mean, remember when we had a most fatal flaw, like when we decided to part ways, it was very tearful on both sides because we cared deeply about each other, and that kind of relationship was functional. And I don't know that I would want that with people. Yes.
Yeah, guaranteed. That being said, we work with a fair trade factory in Nepal, and we've been to each other's houses. We share lots of meals together. Like, we know each other's kids, so it is possible, but it is unique for sure. It's very, very different. Bringing up in the timeline, like what took you to, at some point you changed the name. So name change and supply chain changes, like what are they? Do they coincide? Are they different from each other? Are they related to each other?
They weren't initially related to each other, but they ended up being related to each other. It all kind of culminated in 2020. Trying to figure out where I should begin this story because it's very complicated. Every time I tell it, I feel like I'm going to make it more succinct. But basically, what happened to so many other businesses in 2020. So our supply chain just completely fell apart. And we kept trying to rebuild it, and it kept falling apart month after month after month. Prior to 2020 and 2019, I had made the decision to go through a rebrand, change the name. I was trying to trademark Kind Bar and the trademark in every single retail category. So I needed to change the name, and also this didn't really fit the business that we were running at that point. It was Kind was the business I started in my parents' basement. It wasn't like what's existing 7-8 years later. So that was something that I had waiting to go, waiting to unveil, and then basically shit hit the fan. And we ended up going 7 months without inventory, and we didn't have cash in the bank to last 7 months without inventory. So that was really tricky. I had a very small team that became extremely tiny at that point. It was just me and a contracted production manager. So she worked remote. I closed down our local office. We have a spot in downtown Missoula, and I started working out of the basement here, where I'm talking to you from today. And I really thought I was going to go out of business. Like I was having conversations about bankruptcy with my accountant all the time. Trying to plan what the next step was. And what I thought was going to happen was really that this rebrand was going to be like something that came out of the ashes and it's going to have to fund its own business and then figure out a new way through and start something new. So I didn't really launch the rebrand because I thought it was going to have to be a totally new company. And in all of that, we ended up having a collaboration with an artist and was a pre-sale to kind of like get us through cash flow wise. But then this rebuilt supply chain of vendors that we didn't really know very well or trust very well ended up completely destroying the entire production run, which ended in attorneys and court stuff. And it was an absolute disaster. I just kind of like woke up every morning just in a state of stress, like covered in sweat. Being, okay, is today the day I'm going out of business? Maybe. And then what ended up turning around was found this one small manufacturer in LA that like we just needed to get fall production going. If we could like get something for fall, we could figure out how to kind of take out some lines of credit to get there. And so we ended up finding a factory that could do that. And I think had so many issues along the way, like falling through it. I think we went through 7 different factories in 2020.
What? Like
So,
you actually made samples with 7 different factories?
we would like make samples, get production started, and they would be like, okay, we can have it done in 3 months. And then like 2 months would go by and they hadn't even started.
Oof.
And we'd be like, shit, we don't have time. We need to get it all out. So we'd like go and get all this stuff, move it to the next factory. We got fired from several factories. It was a whole mess. So we finally got stuff delivered and it was going to arrive in November. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make this like, I'm going to plug in all the stuff and see if this works. And if it doesn't, then whatever. But like, I've got this new brand name. I've got this new logo. I've got this new look. We can kind of just like leave this shit show in the past and get all of our new stuff out on the right foot. And so I launched from my basement here in November 2020, rebranded as Youer from Kind Apparel. And we had made like 4 months worth of inventory and we sold it in 20 minutes.
What?
And so I was like, no, we can do this. But then we tried to scramble to get more and more stuff made. And then we were in this cycle for probably a year where every time we launched, we would sell out. And we would be like, oh my God, this is so cool. But also, this is really hard. And now we need to like build a new supply chain. So we kept moving around from factory to factory because of it. We would like grow places. They couldn't keep up with production and the quality would kind of go downhill. But what I realized throughout all of this was that the most important piece of my brain, which was the product, I was putting the responsibility of that into somebody else's hands, like somebody that I didn't even know that well, somebody who didn't care, who didn't know me, who didn't understand why it was important. And I realized that year with going through like a dozen factories in 2 years that I had to do it myself eventually. And that's fun. That was like the impetus behind where we.
And where you are today is you own the factory. You opened a factory in Missoula.
Mm-hmm. We opened a factory in Missoula. We only make 50% of our stuff here. We do have a fantastic partner. We do have a fantastic partner in Los Angeles into making the other 50%. But we have still, like this year, we have still struggled with quality issues and we've gone through several suppliers, several factories.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been
Yeah, that's sometimes when you find the right one and the relationship is good. I hope none of them are listening right now, but it kind of like, it's kind of like, oh, I'll pay a premium for that. I mean, I don't want to say it out loud, but I'll pay a premium for that. That's worth it. That's worth it to me. Because if it means I don't have to start this process again in 3 months, let's do it. But you said something that I feel like we really have to go back to, and that's you sold 4 months worth of forecasted inventory in 20 minutes. So what happened between my business is about to go? I mean, I know the lack of inventory is going to make you go bankrupt, but what happened between no sales to all the sales in 20 minutes? Was it just pent up demand, or were you doing something on the marketing side during this hullabaloo?
I'm glad you touched on that because that was a very important piece of all of this. I really pivot marketing wise. I'm still today the only sales and marketing employee. So content creation, everything, copy, like that's still all me. But what happened then, when you don't have anything to sell and you have 7 months where you have to like remain present and keep people's attention with nothing to actually get them to buy, I realized I just had to be a little creative. And I think before 2020, it's pretty safe to say that people didn't really know what a supply chain was. The average person wasn't involved in one, wasn't impacted by one. But once 2020 hit, it was a buzzword and everybody understood it. So without any product to talk about, I just started talking about what I was going through and being very vulnerable and open with people about like, here's what's happening in manufacturing. Here's what's happening in the made in USA apparel space. Here are all of the dirty secrets that you don't know about. Here is why this is happening. Here's why like all of these things might be delayed getting to your doorstep. And I just started explaining the industry as a whole. And it really resonated with people. And it helped me to grow social media presence in a way that I couldn't before. And to just kind of keeping people engaged in that way. Everyone was like on the edge of their seat wondering, they've been in reading for me. Like, was it going to make it or not? And so finally, when I did, they were like, oh yeah, we're all in. We have the money to support you, and we're going to like, which was great.
That's amazing.
So amazing. Yeah.
What did
like totally saved my business.
So if you sold it out in the first 20 minutes, what did it feel like in on the 30th minute for you? What were you doing when you were seeing all these Shopify orders come in?
I was laying on the floor right here, just like looking up at the ceiling, like it's just like so happy. And like I felt like I really felt it was a really dark time because I had just bought a house, my first house, like a week before COVID, and then all of this happened. I was like, I'm gonna get into the rhythm of this whole. Like I just got married and was fun to house, and I have all these new things that are like real expenses and like I don't think I have a job anymore. Right. And then I kind of panicked a little bit because at that point I had all the inventory here on the spare bedroom. Like dozens of orders and I couldn't put stuff here. So I had to go find a 3PL. And luckily there was a 3PL in town. So I loaded up my truck and I drove everything over there. But then after 3 weeks, they had fucked everything up and I sure can go back there and pull everything out and rent a garage attached to an excavating company and get everything out of there. And that's how we started building our in-person team. So today we're a team of 8 in Missoula.
Okay, so it was the needing to fulfill all these orders is what started to bring first employees in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
we already did fulfillment. Like prior to COVID, we were storing and fulfilling all of our own stuff. But then when there was nothing to fulfill, the gal who was doing our fulfillment unfortunately had to be let go.
Yeah. From November 2020, selling out in 20 minutes to how did you actually fund the launch of a factory in Missoula?
Well, that was all very serendipitous because I knew I needed to start production here. Really had no idea how to do it because there's not a lot of correlation between home sewing and industrial commercial sewing. Like the scale and the systems and the languages that are used and the equipment that's used is very different. I had a set of industrial machines from when I was sewing, but I didn't really know how to begin. And I just kind of started looking at properties. Like I had no business looking at buildings to buy. I couldn't afford it. But right down at the bottom of the mountain that I live on, this dream property popped up. And I went and looked at it. It was super affordable. I could make the numbers work, and I put an offer in on it, and it got accepted. I was under contract. And then I had this crazy situation with an appraisal come back where the appraisal of the building came in $100,000 lower than what I had offered. And, like neither party could make those numbers work. And I had thought that I needed like a big cash infusion for this whole thing to happen. But I didn't want to take on investors. I'd been talking to a lot of people who were possibly interested. I was going to have to give up too much. I was getting absolutely nowhere with banks in terms of extending a line of credit. And so I decided to use my community as a bank. I like 100,000 was the number I needed to buy this building. And I figured, okay, we can do that. We can like totally raise $100,000. Let's structure it like a Kickstarter, but I need all that money. So I can't pay the Kickstarter fee. So I'm going to run it on my own site. So I figured out like how to code my own Kickstarter looking site. And again, at this point, I was the only employee. I had just snapped my Achilles tendon. So I was like recovering from surgery. I made this little stop motion video, built out this site. We launched and had 30 days to raise 100K, and I sold things that didn't cost any money to fulfill. Like I sold a couple of clothing items, but I was making those. A lot of things were, the perks were like, get your face on the wall, name a print, choose the bathroom decorating theme, that kind of stuff. So we sold $100,000 worth of that kind of stuff. And then the owner of the building ended up just like doing 180 and being a complete asshole. And the deal like fell out. Oh, and then the market really shifted and I couldn't afford anything. And I kept looking at buildings. I probably put in like a dozen more offers on other buildings and it wasn't working. So we rented this great space that we're in today, and we used that capital to hire and build out equipment. And in hindsight, like it all happened for a reason. The building that we would have been in, we would have outgrown it immediately. We really just kind of, that money really needed to be used for this. But it was an incredible experience to see the power of community to like support the dream that was mine, really. And like how deeply people wanted to be involved and how deeply people cared has been just the most interesting thing.
Yeah, it must be amazing. It seems like it all goes back to those transparent and vulnerable social media posts that you're doing. Like you were laying it out there and letting people see behind the curtain of what it means to be like a founder, an entrepreneur, a female founder, and like making it all happen. So I think that's amazing. Congratulations. That's very cool. That must be a really
thank you.
Yeah, it must be a great feeling to feel that support of your community and your customers. So you weren't actually selling them anything when they were handing over the money. They were basically handing over money just because they're like, I want you to have this, and they don't expect anything in return. They didn't get a piece of the company. They didn't get nothing. They just said, here you go, do this.
No, we had some tangible perks. Like we make this fleece dress that is like one of our best sellers. So we did make a few hundred of this dress in a specific colorway that was unique to this campaign with a little tag in the back that I signed that was like piece number 1 of 300 or whatever. So we had those. We had a pair of leggings. We had a little tote. And I think that those were the only physical things. We had, it was all like very space themed because this is called the universe. And so we had like, kind of get your face on, it was like space, but also it was called the CSA because it was community supported apparel. So it was like space, but also very plant and gardening focused. It was a funny branding project. But most people, like for $30, and one of the things that were very attainable. So for $200, you could get this dress, but for $30, you could get your face printed out on this little seed packet. So it goes up in the wall. So now when you go into our space, we have going up the stairs, we have all the little seed packets of all the people who supported the CSA. We people named prints. People, we had a couple wedding dresses. Actually, I found some white fleece, and so I personally sewed 6 of these like custom white fleece wedding dresses, and I think they were like $700 or $800 a piece. And like those sold out immediately. Like we had people renewing their vows in these dresses, getting married in them, and it was so cool.
You have such good customers.
They really are.
That is a testament to you. Like people, and that's how I found out about you the first time. Somebody sent me, they're like, you got to see this. You got to see this woman on Instagram. Have you ever heard of building in public? Have you ever heard that idea? Okay. So It's big in like, maybe like the tech world. So it's like you build in public. As you're developing your idea and your concept and trying to get those, most of them, they're always like looking for investors. You build in public. So you're kind of sharing the ups and downs of the entrepreneurial life. And I'm an advocate for it. I think it's for bootstrap companies, it's the cheapest and easiest way to market yourself. And so I'm always talking about, and somebody sent it to me like, this is building in public. And they sent me you and you're contagious. Like your Instagram reels, it's like a rabbit hole of just entertainment and instruction and knowledge and like good feelings. Like it's really, and I'm not way outside of your target market. So I can't imagine what your target market must feel like when they watch your stuff.
They love hearing that. My whole strategy with content has always been like, there's so much there's just so much shouting out into the wood, like trying to find your customer. And our stuff is expensive. And I was getting sick of people stumbling into our booth at an event and being like, oh, wine was so expensive. And then I'd have to explain it's made in the US, it's recycled, it's bio, it's all of these things. So I decided, like, instead of finding customers, I just need to create the customers I want. So if I want somebody to buy a $230 jacket, then I need to explain to them and train them and educate them as to how to be like a proper consumer of the things that we're making and why it is this price. And like, we don't get pushback on pricing at all now, because I think people do feel like there's value in it, and they've learned about supply chains and they've learned about the things that they consume. But it's all come from me just deciding, like, I just have to like create the customer that we need. So I'm going to do that by just shouting all of these instructional things at you about how those are made.
Does it come easy to you? I mean, is that something that's easy for you to hop in front of the camera and just hit selfie mode and bam, go? Or is it a muscle that you've built over time and it was hard to start from the beginning?
It is really easy for me. I did a lot of acting as a child, and I had like a past life as a sort of like a child prodigy violinist. So I was on stage a lot as a kid and like preparing and talking to people and performing. And I think that at the time I didn't understand what benefit that would have in my later life, but I think that's totally what it comes from. It is easy for me to put myself out there. It's less easy to receive the criticism that it inevitably brings when you get in front of millions of people who don't know who you are, like think that your armpits are fat or you don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's very challenging to deal with, but I think it's just the reality of the internet.
Yeah, dirty internet. Oh, it's such a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm.
What would your advice be to somebody who wasn't a prodigy violinist and didn't spend time acting, but realizes that this is a very viable method for them to advertise or market and sell their products? So they don't necessarily have the natural stage presence. Like, what would you say? Like, what's the first couple steps you'd say to somebody? Just like, this is why you should do it, and this is how you can do it.
I think you just have to be yourself, and you also have to practice a little bit. Like anything, I think that's been the biggest takeaway in business. But people don't necessarily. Yes, some people have a natural talent for stuff, but the gift can be curated through practice and time. And I think, like, when I first started making videos, I didn't feel uncomfortable doing it, but I wasn't making good videos. But over time, I figured out how to be more succinct and how to practice. But I really believe that people buy from people. Like, it's all about creating relationships. And when you create a relationship or the idea of a relationship with somebody through a screen, it doesn't matter if you are extremely eloquent or you're stumbling and you appear nervous. Like, somebody is going to really value you for what you're putting out there. And if you are less polished, that might even create more of a strong relationship because they might see themselves in you and see the vulnerability in you. But I think you just have to, if you feel strongly about creating a very person-driven brand, like I am definitely the face of my brand. If that's where you want to go, you just have to start and you just have to practice and know that, like, you're going to put out a lot of junk and people are probably not going to be super nice. So people are also going to be overwhelmingly amazing. And stuff. Yeah.
The fact of the matter is, if you're on, doesn't matter what side of the camera you're on, that's the same advice, right? If you're going to be shooting photos of other people or videos of other people, the same advice. You just got to get going and be kind to yourself, and yeah, you'll get better over time. Do you have a strategy behind it? Are you kind of mapping out, okay, I'm going to make a video about this and it's going to be on this date? Or are you just kind of like, the muse has hit, I'm hitting record, let's go?
I try to be very strategy driven, but then stuff comes in. Like, I think my big challenge at the moment is I'm struggling to find time doing content. So I have a strategy in the sense that I have like a whole system that videos go through before they get posted. And I have these pieces of information and these pillars of information that I'm trying to get on a weekly basis. But I diverge from that plan regularly because of time.
Oh, so you're an entrepreneur?
But there's like, yeah, there's always some sort of, there's always something that's going to get in the way. But I try to have a little bit of a balance of like keeping with my strategy and my calendar that I've laid out and not being so rigid that it disallows for spontaneity. Like, if I have a really fun idea for a video that has nothing to do with what I'm supposed to be working on that month or that week, I'm on my way, I'm screwed. And sometimes those videos do really well and sometimes they don't. Like, we made a video the other day that I was really excited about just because it was like fun and artistic and like felt like I was creating a little bit of a piece of art. And I didn't really expect it to do very well, and it didn't do very well. But whatever. filled a creative need of mine.
It's your world. You can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's awesome. The post that I've seen or seen referenced by you is the REI one. And I kind of dug into it, and I think actually Outside Magazine covered it online. I saw a hit on it. So it's pretty awesome that it definitely got a lot of coverage. It kind of hits on two things that I'm interested in talking about and you've touched on it, kind of creating your own customers, but it's like, so you've got the social media, let's call it strategy. Sometimes it's implemented and sometimes it's not, but you have a very solid brand voice, brand presence. That's you. And then you're also kind of thinking about how to sell and create customers. And you get invited, it sounds like you get invited to go to REI Mothership in Seattle, and like, where all outdoor industry dreams theoretically could come true with their huge deep pockets. What did your REI sales trip look like?
I always thought that REI was like sort of like the pinnacle of success. Get your brand on REI. Sure. I was part of I guess it was an incubator, like kind of thing. I thought the retailer. What year was it? In 2019, maybe 2018, and it culminated in a pitch event. And there was a board of judges, and the vice president of retail was one of the judges. And I did my whole pitch, and I felt super excited about it. And then the panel gets asked questions, and the first panel was from this VP, and she said, "Are you available to come to our headquarters and pitch your brand to our buyers? You are going to be a great fit for REI. We can't wait to have you in the store." And like standing ovation, everybody was super excited. It was like a very clear, like, oh yeah, you're going to like, I thought it was a shoe-in for sure. I'm getting into REI. And so after the pitch, we got to like have a little round table with those people. And she was like, "Yep, here's my info. Here's this person's info. Reach out to them. We'll schedule you." And then it all went downhill. I remember like getting on the plane to go, thinking it was like the coolest business trip I'd had in my career yet. It was like I remember we got rated to first class, and I've got this rental car, which I like never had the budget to do any of this kind of stuff. So, but I was like, this is all going to happen. It's going to be amazing. And I had like this whole presentation, and everything laid out. I get into the meeting room, and then I was going to be meeting with this woman who invited me, and she didn't show up. She sent an assistant buyer, which I know assistant buyers do a lot of the buying. We work with many assistant buyers. And she just never really understood the brand. Like, I was going through my whole presentation with her, and I showed her this fleece dress I'm selling. And she was like, "So is this expedition weight fleece?" And I was like, "I'm so confused right now. This is a fleece dress. Nobody is wearing this on my wrist. This is not like, it's made out of technical fabrics, but like you're walking the dog in it, you're going to work in it." And prints are bullshit. Like, we do all prints. And she goes, "Well, we just don't really do prints. Like, it just doesn't do prints." It's like, oh, okay. Well, then I just started thinking went downhill. I asked for an email. She was like, "No, I'll email you." I brought her like a little accessory and I called to give it to her. She's like, "No, I'm good." And she left, and he never heard from them again. And I was bummed, really bummed. Yeah, and I made this video. I mean, I'm really similar for years. Like, it was kind of embarrassed about the whole situation. So I was like, I feel really dumb because I thought I was getting into art, and then I went and I had this meeting, and it did not go as anticipated. So I never really told her she couldn't get any content about it. As in, well, in 2019, and then in 2022, 3 years later, I made this video on TikTok. I had 1 followers at the time, and I was just kind of starting to use TikTok. There was no strategy behind it. Nobody was listening to what I was saying or watching, so I decided to just do video creation by making this video, and I put it up, show off my phone, woke up the next day, I had 1 million views, and I had like 10,000 likes. And it was wild. Like, the video has gotten way more exciting and interesting experiences, I think, than getting my brand.
Nice. That's such a good story. You said I read a quote from you that's about that story that said you say it at the end of the video. You've gone from chasing to waiting on for customers. That to me is like such a good I love that quote, by the way. Copyright that. So can you help me understand like what you're thinking about going from chasing to waiting?
You know, I think a lot of it applies to the wholesale side of things. For so many years, so I've been trying to knock down every door, trying to get into every store, and it's been slow. And we don't, at this point, we're 90% direct consumer. We sell to very few stores. And I felt like I was just always trying to explain why the store should carry my stuff. It's just like putting in so much effort when it obviously wasn't the right fit. And I think that's kind of what I realized with REI. It was like, this isn't the pinnacle of success. I don't need to be trying so hard. It's kind of like when you're making friends as a kid, like there's someone you really, really want to be friends with and they don't want to be friends with you. Like you're not actually going to be friends with them. It's just going to be weird. But if you like naturally come across a person who's similar to you and you guys end up forming this great relationship, it's so serendipitous and fun. And that's kind of the same philosophy. Like you can't just like aggressively shout at people that carry my brand. So we decided to just kind of sit down and wait for the people who actually felt like our brand was a good fit to find us. And that has happened in so many
And
ways.
that's how your wholesale sales come about is basically people are like, hey, I seen this. I love it. Can I sell it?
Yes, we don't do any wholesale pitching. We just wait till like somebody comes into a store wearing our stuff and then the buyer asks them what their brand is and then the buyer reads it.
Wow. Well, that's good. I like playing the long game. I think it's good. I think it's also just a good mindset to come into things with. So good on you for sitting on that diamond for 3 years and then letting it out to the world. That's really good.
When I realized after getting there, I was thinking, okay, like we're not really the right fit for brand. Who cares? Like we're like a fun brand that people are discovering, and when they discover it, they dive into all layers. It's more than just a consumer is going to REI for a purpose. They're going for a specific piece of clothing they need for a specific activity. Like there's a lot of discovery that's happening there. At least I wasn't. And so I felt like once I kind of like into it.
God bless the internet, right? You can find your people. They're out there.
And then BuzzFeed ended up picking up that story. They saw the TikTok video. And that was really wild. BuzzFeed wrote an article about this, and it was on Yahoo News and AOL, and they just woke up that morning and had just tons of texts from people from my class who hadn't talked in. Saw you on Apple News and BuzzFeed, and we had like 30,000 people go to our website.
That's so good.
It was super cool. We've got a lot of new customers and new connections and new stores, new retailers out of
So let that be a lesson. If you're thinking about building in public and being the founder face of your brand, here it is. Do it. And even the darkest, worst stories that you've been holding on to for 3 years could be like the real gems that get you propelled into the limelight.
Totally. There was even REI got tagged. I think like 2 million people saw that video or something. So REI got tagged in the comments tons of times. And they never reached out, but there is like an employee-run REI Instagram account or something where I forget what it's called. That's some funny name. It's all sort of like these instant jokes about REI and story. Like they,
yeah, that's so good. Yeah, you never know where it's going to come from. Right? You never know where it's going to come from. That's so cool. Good for you. I guess that you kind of answered. I had a question about where do your new customers come from? Like, how do you find your new customers? But it seems like I'm guessing they're finding you, just casting it out there on social media. Do you do any paid advertising?
They've never done $1.
Oh my gosh, really? You have 90% e-commerce sales?
It's all through making content.
That's amazing. Good for you.
In events, I think that going to in-person events, granted the scale of acquisition is much you can get in front of people in a minute in an event, but the customer acquisition through events is one thing, and then content. I think we go through like ebbs and flows. Like right now, general content is kind of boring. It's not really sparking with people the last couple of weeks. That's not like hitting the parts of the algorithm that it needs to hit to get into the faces of people who I want to see our stuff. But yeah, this whole like waiting and not chasing thing totally applies to my social media strategy.
But I would imagine that you have I know you have very loyal customers who will give you money just to be a seed photo on the wall. So I would imagine that every time you drop new product, the same people are coming back for more. So your lifetime value of your customers are quite high, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had our spring drop 2 days ago, and we had like 75% return customer rate on the drop. That's also why we drop new stuff every single month, which is like a huge lift. And honestly, I'm kind of rethinking it at this point, but we have new little capsules of outfits that drop every couple of weeks, really. And that is specifically because we don't do paid ads. Like, we're not going out and acquiring new customers all the time. So if we launch new things frequently, then I know that we can sell a lot to the same people over and over.
It's always cheaper. I always say it's always cheaper to sell new things to old customers. Selling I don't mean old things, but like previous products or consistent products to new customers is so expensive, especially now. I think that's a great strategy. It's very challenging for a lot of different people. And there you go. There's another feather in the cap of why you should own your own factory, is that you can constantly be bringing out new drops to then satiate and bring in the revenue. What would you do differently if you had to do things differently? And then on the opposite side of the coin is, what would you do again, but sooner in your career?
Yeah. So I think about this a lot. I think that I wouldn't have chosen to college initially. I wish that because I've kind of always known I wanted to do that. I wish that I hadn't just started this in advance and wasting those years and that money on going to get an education that, people have always said, oh, it teaches you like discipline and it teaches you communication and hard work. And yeah, I think that's true. But I also think it really had a lot of that stuff figured out already. And I would have loved to have gotten an extra 4-year step in my business. So I probably might do that differently. And then I also think I would have I think I got very distracted by big growth initially. And like the world of growth and all these female founders, it's like Ty Haney from Outdoor Voices and Emily Weiss from Glossier, who are just like running these billion-dollar companies that it's so unrealistic for people like me. And I think I wanted to make decisions based off of growing a gigantic business, but really I should have been controlling a team, building an in-house team, keeping production in-house. I do wish that I had really built in-house production much sooner. So I guess that might answer like what I would do, but differently or sooner. Because I think that what we're doing right now makes a lot of sense, but we have a long way to go to make it really financially make sense. So yeah, I wish we started that earlier. And then I really wish that I built a team. I fleshed out a team like earlier than I did.
What kept you from it? Like fear of spending the money on them? Or is it you just didn't have the money?
Yeah. I think fear of spending the money. And then also I just didn't really have like systems and processes in place. So it felt overwhelming to try and communicate how I do things to people for a long time. And yeah, and then I also just thought like, I can do it all. Like I can be a one-person business. Like, you can be a one-person business.
It's true. I mean, that's kind of the classic founder story is like, oh, I can do it. Oh, I'll just do it now. Oh, it's just faster and easier if I just do it myself. And even when you get a team, you can still do that. Oh, I'll just do this one by myself. You haven't figured that out yet. Or I'll do it for 6 months and then you'll watch over my shoulder. Then you'll have it. So they have it sorted out. And you're like, no, you're still doing it 8 months later. You touched on something that resonates for me too. Is like, I think there's, the world of entrepreneurship is like based around this. It seems like based around this idea of like investment backed, everybody be a unicorn and grow this massive company because that's how we're going to define success culturally. But we've left off the table the opportunity to have like a really cool small business that employs people in your hometown, lets you live in a place you want to live, lets you go skiing if you want to go skiing, lets you walk your dog when you want to walk your dog. Like, do the things that you want to do. Dare I say a lifestyle business that is like really great and could give you a really great living. And I think we need to be like spreading that gospel to more and more entrepreneurs, especially the younger ones, to be like, you can build a dream life business, and it's a lot of work, but it's possible, and you don't have to raise a bunch of money and give away a bunch of things. And yeah, you may not have a private jet at the end of it, but so that leads me to my question, because I think step one of being an entrepreneur is like, you have to define success for yourself, because private jet may be your definition of success. And if that's your definition of success, God bless, go for it. It doesn't happen to be my definition of success. So my question for you is, how do you define success for yourself?
I think that's a very relevant question for me, because I feel like I'm constantly trying to figure out what it means to me, and it's changing a lot. And I feel like right now, I feel like I'm in a place where I'm extremely overwhelmed, and I've been overwhelmed for a long time, but I'm overwhelmed in a new way and challenged in a new way, and fun. Like, I don't have time for anything. I wake up at 5 a.m. every day. I get 5 hours of sleep. I am just going all the time. And I realized recently that so much of my work is very creative, and every single moment of every single day is very structured. I don't have space for everything to wander and inspiration, and kind of like those dull moments. I think never allowing myself to be bored. And I think out of boredom comes very interesting innovation. So I think for me in this moment, success really means like having time to take a breather, like having the space and flexibility to remember who I am outside of work. As founders, we get very ramped up in it very much so defines us. And I think that's an amazing thing of being a founder, when I think everything we need as a human, or most things I need as a human, I can get from my work, because I can take my business in a new direction to fuel whatever I'm needing at the moment. But trying to figure out what my life is outside of you is something I'm working on. And I think success means having a little bit of a definition between the two. And I'm certainly like not really quite there yet.
Do you have any ideas about how you're going to get there?
One strategic hire that I need to make, I think is going to help me get there. But I think on a very big misunderstanding, not a misunderstanding, but a very big like lapse of thinking when I started building a team. And having no management experience before this business, I just kind of thought that like I could keep being like the content creator, the director of marketing, the creative director, and then also like have all these people. But managing people is a full-time job. And when you are the only manager on the team, or you are the CEO, you can't also be the creative director. Studying the tricks and practices, and so I think that I don't know if I love managing people as my only job, but I need to offload some of these other tasks, so be like more fully present as a leader.
That's really good insight. I hope that you can find it. I mean, there's lots of. That's a very common issue we find ourselves in as founders and entrepreneurs, especially of smaller teams as they grow. You're not alone. It happens to all of us. There are solutions. There are ways out, but it's certainly not easy. Simple, not easy, I think is what people say. Maybe it seems like to me, you need to go find some space to build some forts.
Yeah, I do.
I think it's really...
I need to work on not feeling guilty.
Oh, did you have that? You have that issue?
I really do. Yeah, I took the day off yesterday actually, and I went a long walk, and it was like I got almost canceled. Too much stuff to do, but I needed to take it in. And my team is very supportive of it. Like they push me to like go get space for myself. Like they're fine with me. And they remind me of that a lot. But I think we also just like that state of being very busy is so familiar to me that like not being busy feels weird. But sometimes you don't need to be busy just to being busy.
There's a lot going on there. There's a lot to unpack there for sure. I think I really appreciate you sharing that and to do the whole story. It seems like your life has led to this in a lot of ways, right? When you think about the idea of like building forts and the creativity and the being outside and kind of building things and being kind of the master of your own domain in that way, and being able to call your own shots, and then upselling your organic lemonade and being on stage as a concert violinist and trying out acting, like all these things throughout your life. It's very cool to see that you're pulling them all into where you are now, and it's making you the leader and the business person that you are. So it's very interesting, and it's really enjoyable to watch you and your company grow and be successful. So thanks for doing it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
So where can people find out about more about you and then Youer as well? Send us in the right direction.
Use social media. Instagram is definitely the place to hang with us. It's usually me on there. Sometimes I get help responding to messages, but my handle is shop Youer, SHOP, like you're going shopping, and Youer, YOUER, like more you. My handle, I promise, also handles is shop Youer. And then our website.
Cool.
Youer.
Thanks so much. I know that there's lots in here that we've all learned, and I really appreciate you telling the story and being transparent. So we look forward to see where you take it. Thanks for listening to the show. If you know someone who would enjoy this episode, please share it with them. If you enjoyed it, take 30 seconds to give us a review on your podcast player. Ratings and reviews go a long way in spreading the word about the show. It takes hours to create an episode and only 30 seconds to leave a review. We'd really appreciate it. To learn more about CORE, visit coreoutdoors.org. That's KORE outdoors.org. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.